Everybody, welcome to Starting a Private Practice. Here we are back again talking about that really exciting step, that thing that starts to make it feel really real in starting your private practice, the website.
Today we're joined by a guest, Sara Dungan-Hackgraft, who is a therapist in Alabama. And we're going to be diving into her website. It's a vulnerable thing, and we're so grateful for her to take the time as we support her in making this website really a home base for her marketing.
So here we go. Sara, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Just to catch up our listeners, could you describe kind of your private practice journey to date in about 2 minutes or less, like the fast journey?
I graduated in 2015. This is a second career for me. In 2016, I found you guys right when I was starting my private practice. I signed up for the Lifetime program. I like Lifetime. That just like I love that I keep getting resources. And in Alabama, you can graduate and start a private practice when you are associate or pre-licensed before you're fully licensed. So I was able to set that up. And my focus was really families of divorce and trying to help families transition in the best possible way. So I think I had gone through a divorce myself, and I watch how people do it really well. And what the research says is if you can keep parents talking, you can keep kids connected. And so my focus, really, my passion is really helping children by helping their parents.
Beautiful. And what does your private practice look like today?
Well, it is growing to group practice. I feel like in the start of 2023, I'm like right on the edge of really getting this. So it's taken a long time because there's so much. It does feel like you're drinking out of a fire hydrant. I never had a business before. So understanding the business end, I think it really took me four or 5 years to really get here as I'm, talking the different phases. But I really feel like I'm going to crack the code of group practice.
That's beautiful. And I think one of the pieces too is that you were full as a solo practice for several years, and feeling kind of like, oh, this is in flow, and this is like, I'm feeling good about this. And then as you moved into group practice, right, you're kind of get back into that beginner mind again of, oh, there's some new things to unpack and unlock. So that's really normal. I think that's a lot of people have that experience.
Right. So you could be starting a practice over and over again. In some ways, there's like bits. I watched your website, for example, shift a lot over time. I remember a time when there was like a whole rewriting of the website, and now it's like redoing of the SEO and seeing how with each step of growth comes like an evolution of the other parts as well. So how do you feel about your website today?
I really like it. I'm comfortable. Like I've learned how to go on the back end and make any changes I want to make. And then not only have I learned that, but then also I've passed that responsibility onto my client care coordinator. So she has the confidence to make those decisions, add blogs, change blogs, things like that. So I feel really comfortable. And I often get compliments on, my website, and Google wise, I have spoken to Google a lot over the years. And so I think that's also is helping my SEO. So,
yeah. And for anyone who's listening, if you want to go and take a peek, you can go to Sparrow, like the bird, SPARROW, counsel, like a counselor, COUNSEL, just one L, we're here in the States, .com, sparrowcounsel.com. So what is your biggest source of discomfort or confusion, or like, what's that like next growth edge for your website right now? You were mentioning that you've made some changes, and there was a little bit of like, I made all these changes and I'm kind of like, I'm not Because there's a part of me that's kind of not sure if they're working or if they're the right changes or what's happening right now with your
Okay.
website.
I think what's happening is as I've grown my group practice, like I've hired people that don't necessarily feel called to working with people of divorce. So that was not a great hire. So I've learned that. But also as I'm working with families who are transitioning in divorce, I've also found it to be it's really difficult work. And so I have toned down my website. So it's not so like when clients will go to the website or people that were surfing, they're like, oh, it's only for divorce. And I don't want people to get that impression. We do work with couples. We do work, I've moved it more to families in transitions and families into difficult transitions. And so on my services, rather than having all of these services listed in regards to divorce and separation, I've actually just done a link that says, if you're interested in divorce and separation, go to these services, because it's like 5 or 6 other services that we provide, really, that I provide, related to the divorce and separation realm.
So let's talk about this,
Okay.
right? Which I think is really important. As I look at your services drop down, right? We have and again, it's kind of going back to your tagline, strengthening families, marriage counseling and couples therapy, the individual counseling and therapy, counseling for teens, premarital and pre-engagement counseling, which is awesome, blended family counseling, right? Like what happens once you've been through a divorce and then you're blending again. And we know that the rates of divorce for second marriages and for blended families can actually be quite high because
it's high. It's like 75%.
Ooh, yeah. So that space of how do we catch people maybe after the divorce and before their second divorce, the discernment counseling of, hey, we're not sure if we want to stay together, get separated, or get divorced. We're someplace
That's my favorite one. I'm just going to say that's my favorite one. I love that one because if you start people having hard conversations, you start the whole transition so much better. I love discernment counseling. But go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And then the separation and divorce services, right? And then we get into retreats and speaking and those other pieces. But I think I love what you're talking about in terms of what does this look like? Ultimately, I want to support kids. Like I want to support kids and families. And how do we stay connected, right? Through difficult situations, whether that's conflict in the family, whether that's a connection, a reconnection, a blending of families, whether that's going through some kind of stressful time that maybe could lead to divorce or it could lead to a reconnection. Yeah. But what does that look like? What were some of the pieces that you found to be really difficult in terms of getting all of that to show up on one website?
I think it's trying to think larger and more go globally, but I think as an LMFT, I'm an LPC and an LMFT. LMFTs are not, they're just not as strong here as LPCs are, but I love family systems. So I think speaking around families and helping families feels more global than thinking, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that feels more wider.
Yeah.
Am I answering your question, Miranda?
No, I think it is. I think you are. What I notice when I come to your homepage is that when I look at your drop down of services and I just look at when I land on your page, I don't know that I like feel the totality of like how much expertise you have in this.
Correct. Before, when you had this website really tailored to going through this, like before, during, and after divorce, basically was more of the theme. When you pulled back to go global, you pulled back without still holding all of the nuance. You know, it's hard. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
But like individuals, couples, families, and transitions, does not fully encapsulate you from the get-go. I think people need to know this. From the get-go, you have been highly niched.
Mhm.
You focus on training your therapists in these niches as well. There's a lot of expertise here that I think is lost. And in that initial Alabama therapist for individuals, couples, and families in transitions.
I think I toned down. I think we had expert, and I think what happens is I don't always feel like an expert. So I'm like, expert feels so strong of a word that I'm like, I don't know if that's really.
Well, let's talk about this. Who refers to you?
Well, Google, but I do get court work and lawyers, and then a lot of word of
Pause.
mouth.
Pause. We're talking about attorneys and judges
You have a lot of relationships
who
there.
are referring over to you. Do attorneys and judges refer to just anyone?
No.
They want
Absolutely not.
experts.
They will only refer to experts.
Right. Yeah.
So I think for most people, I think the fear that they have is actually like pretty valid. And often I would say like, hey, I have a specialty or I'm specializing in this, might be like a way to bring that down from like an expert, right? But in a lot of cases, for many of these specializations, you guys actually are experts that are actually recognized by the Alabama court system. Right? So I think that's a piece that I want to like push on a little bit when we're talking about this.
What do I do? Okay, go ahead, Randa. I'm sorry.
I think the other part too is that there's something really warm about the way that you talk about like, hey, I really want to keep people together. No matter what you're going through, I want to keep you together. And that doesn't really like come through.
Okay.
Right? This like Alabama therapist specializing and helping kids and families stay connected no matter what happens. Right?
Okay.
Working with divorce, blended families, grief, major stress, whatever those things are, like to kind of like throw those things out as to like, hey, here's what's going on. I think there's something in there in terms of you really saying like, look, we're here to bring everybody together. That doesn't mean you have to stay married. It doesn't mean that you have to get divorced, but it does mean that like for our current and next generation, if we're going to like get through this, we need to learn how to like navigate this really tough stuff. And
so that piece is trying to understand how to put that articulate that no matter because often like the families that are coming, you've got one leaning out of the marriage and one leaning into the marriage. Yeah. So the person that's leaning out of the marriage wants to see the separation and divorce.
Yeah.
But they want to see that. The one leaning in sees that and gets anxious and says, I don't want to go there. That they're all about divorce.
Right.
So how many, and this is, I don't know the answer to this. How many couples do you get in that don't have children? What percentage?
I would say probably 10%.
Okay. So I have a feeling that there's probably something in there that you could really lean into, because we're kind of hitting that 90%. And again, there's always pros and cons to everything, but I might play with the idea of you both love your kids. Now, are you going to stay married? Figuring out how to navigate blended families, divorce, separation, or reconciliation to live a life that you all love or something like that. Like that could be a place to kind of play and lean into.
I think there's something about what you talked about, and I want to help you reformat this homepage. You have a big gap, like, and you don't want any big white space because then that increases your scroll, which takes longer to get to a click, and we don't want to do that. But I think there's something about what you said, keeping people talking so that connection isn't lost. Right? Like
Right.
you can make a transition without it breaking down and going into chaos. That's the key here. Right? Like you don't need chaos for you to have a change.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that's my experience
Yeah.
with you. I'm fortunate we know each other well enough that I can pull that out. And
Yeah.
then when I go through your homepage and I see this, that's not your first steps towards healing, assessment, education, restoring hope, empowerment, and planning. I think that has really, it's so broad now, and it's ethereal, and it's not like the grit of who you are.
Okay.
There is something like there is power when you speak about this work and your passion behind it. And that should be here in this homepage of like, what's their first steps? First, you've got to realize, you know, like if you had a family walk in, what would you tell them? This is how it's going to go. You know, like one of the things for people listening that Sara changed in her process is she was recognizing couples weren't making it through the entire process of certain types of counseling, right? You had seen like people drop out when it started to get hard. And what you changed was that initial contact explaining like around episode it's going to get hard and you're going to want to quit. But if we can get through 6, 7, you're going to make it to 10. And you increased people finishing to the end and having better outcomes with that. And that's what the website is also there to do, is preparing their hearts and having that kind of authority, that expertise, not that you are narcissistic or bragging, but you care that you're going to fight for them to make it to that finish line and have the outcome that they really seek.
Right.
Ooh, what about that piece? Like I'll fight for your relationship, your hope, and your peace, whether you decide to separate, divorce, or blend your families.
Yeah. And that could then link to those specialty pages too on the homepage as well, backlink there.
Yeah. And I think too, once you get people into the specialty pages of, hey, I'm trying to figure out, should we get divorced? Should I stay or should I go? You take them to discernment counseling, and then you can dive into how that works. If I know that, hey, we're trying to blend our family, we're trying to decide if we're going to get engaged and we've never been married, goes to a different page, then, hey, we both have families and we're trying to decide if we're going to get engaged. Like this is like, and blend our families, like, ooh, this is really scary.
So just to recap for people listening, so far, your homepage, when you land on it, I got to know right away who you are, what you do, but like also the essence. So I'm pulled in or I'm repelled by if it isn't for me. So there is some things we need to change in that header and in that subtitle to be a little bit more true to the uniqueness of your practice, then kind of formatting the page in a way to eliminate the white space and also start claiming how the value, your mission of how you work really. And then you said you changed the divorce page. Can we look at that just a little bit real quick? That you changed your divorce page to incorporate all of the divorce services.
Right. So it's now you go down the tab and it's separation and divorce services. You click on that and
it's really confusing.
It's hard to read.
So what it looks like for us is I'm just scrolling and scrolling. It's not clear that there's anything that I would be clicking on really, because it's so small. And then like the click here is over here. I can't click on the page. It doesn't seem like these are things. It just seems like it's a list of pieces. So even like divorce and family mediation, it says click here to find out how we can help. I don't even see the click here because it's such a light blue, which you and I have talked about this before, that like that color being hard for me.
You would do better with a single block of color with icons for each type of services all in one. So people can say here, 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 and they just click. To create this much scroll is going to dilute the interest in all of these specialties. And I just know, like, how this is like, we'll make a note of that. This is like this is how you first began, what you are known for, where you are most consistent, and it is the most disorganized. So I want it to be really like punchy and for it to stand out and be easeful. I totally understand you want people to come to this hub and then go into the specialties, but we need to reformat it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was tracking with you until you said icons. Like I wasn't getting that.
So like little pictures, like a little image, like a picture
for each service.
For each service with its name underneath, so that people know I just click here. Or it could be a picture with an overlay of the name of that service, and it says click here to learn more, so that there's not this long scroll, so that we're not looking for these tiny little blue links, but it's all right here. Here's all the ways we help.
Okay, great.
Miranda's duplicating the page so we can kind of create an idea to show you what that could look like.
Okay.
Do you see that just even immediately?
Yeah.
How now we have each of these images, we could design the image. We can do these at different formats, right?
So what Miranda is doing, for those of you that are on the podcast, is that she's taking a gallery kind of grid. So we can create images with a small amount of text and make it very clear that you click here to go into another deeper page.
Okay.
Instead of having to scroll, because the scroll is where you're going to lose people. I mean, there's some beautiful like nuggets of what you do and what your team can do.
Mm-hmm.
So we want it all to be right up front and center.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you create this is like a little technical piece. If you create a gallery that has this information for this particular page, and then you add it here, then you can also go ahead and use that gallery in multiple places on your website. So you could have that gallery on your homepage. You could add that gallery into the bottom of a blog post that's talking about divorce work, that's getting a lot of material in there. Like you can use it in a lot of places.
I personally would use it on every page that's related to divorce. Hey, still curious about other ways we help with divorce? Click here below, because maybe they're like, oh, I want to know about mediation. Oh, wait, maybe not mediation. Maybe we need this pre-divorce therapy, so that they can read and then they can know what the next options are within this range of things related to divorce. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
You can duplicate that gallery on all of those specialty pages. A lot of the website is thinking about, is it easy for me to know the next step? And typically Miranda and I wouldn't suggest on your homepage having 10 options, because the more options you give, the more indecision you create. But in this case, it being a specialty page and it really being more like a hub, put all of the options there.
Okay. On the homepage.
No, on the page.
On the page. So
for divorce.
On the, for the homepage, for example, it might be something about divorce and separation, blended families, right? Pre-engagement and premarital. Maybe it's just those 3 options or 4 options, right? In terms of what those pieces are.
Okay.
Maybe that's enough there, but we can kind of play with that a little bit. But we do think that because we know that you're getting a lot of traffic to these divorce pages,
yes,
we want to ensure that that process is really easy and clear. And again, think about this, that, probably, and I can look at the stats on your material, we have about 44% of people coming on mobile. About 44% of people coming on mobile. So a lot of this that even on a desktop is like, oh, that's insufficient. On a mobile might even just be like, I'm just like scrolling going, what? I don't understand. Or vice versa. Sometimes we look at something on a mobile and we go, oh, this totally makes sense. And then you get to it on a desktop and it's like, oh, this doesn't look good anymore.
My other concern is you rank really high for a lot of the divorce services because that's where you started. And then if you go and bury all of that, the traffic's going to decrease some, and that might alert Google to some changes. And I just want to be sure that it's very easeful for people to access. So
Okay.
for those people listening on the podcast, this is about converting people to call you, and you do that through your messaging, and you do that through ease of using the site. You make the next step really clear and easeful.
And I want to jump in for a second. And for those of you who are listening, who you're like, oh my gosh, this is feeling kind of overwhelming. Like, oh my goodness, how do I do all of this? The thing to know is that when you get started, you usually are just starting with a one-page website. That authentic transformation proposition that we talked about in step 5, like that is going to be your homepage. You're going to put your picture up. You're going to make sure there's an easy way for people to contact you. And then we start there and getting that to show up on Google. It's when we start to expand over time that things get more complex. And I do think this is another piece for those of you who are listening who think, well, is my one specialization enough? Maybe I'm not going to be speaking to as many people. Notice that as you try to speak to more people, it does get more complex. It does get a little bit more technical.
What Sarah's facing.
Yeah. So know that it's okay to be really focused as you start, and that can make it much easier in terms of marketing, which we're going to be talking about in the future in terms of your marketing plan. When you just stay focused in one area, as we make shifts, right? There's kind of a cascade effect once we're established.
Right. And I think what, Sara, you're learning about the homepage, I want you to apply moving forward, always looking at that header saying, am I claiming my brilliance, or am I trying to water it down? Because for whatever reason, whatever's coming up, of like, is it really clear who this is for? Is it really clear and easy? If I just take my eyes away from the screen and I come back, is it really clear for me to see where to click and where to go? Or do I have to scroll? Is it hard for me to find? Always that fresh eye. It's hard when you've been looking at it. So take breaks, come back, refresh your eyeballs, and take a look every page. That header, ease of use, where to click. The messaging is truly from your heart, because you will never lose speaking from that. That is your biggest strength. I've always felt that way. And it is for a lot of clinicians. When you tap into your why, and you're in that space of like fighting for, caring for those people you love serving, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Now, what I think probably would have happened had we not had this coaching session today is that you would have looked maybe a month or 3 months from now, and you say, my clicks, I'm still getting a lot of clicks, but I'm not getting as many calls. My conversion rate has gone down. What's been happening? Right. So sometimes we can figure that out from the data. And I think it's so interesting because I see therapists all the time. They say something like, I increased my fee and I'm not getting any calls. It must be my fee. And we'll say things like, well, is your fee listed on your website? And they'll go, no. We'll go, well, then how could it be your fee? And we'll dig in and go, what else changed? Well, I also did A, B, C, D during that time. Oh, well, let's go look at that and see if it's really clear and see if it's really focused, or let's look and see whether you change something so Google doesn't understand what you do any longer, and make that shift. So I think it's always good to always go back to the client experience and take it one step at a time. Number one, does Google understand what I'm doing? Right? So that they can send me people. Number two, when the people get there, do the people understand what I'm doing? Right? So that they could say yes or no. And then as they understand what I'm doing, and as they scroll down, is the heart there that somebody goes, oh, yes, I need this and I need it right now, to the point that they feel like they have this installation of hope, right? If you've ever gone, I always talk about this, I'm such a nerd about it, but those treatment planner books back in the day, I remember flipping through them when I worked at the psych hospital, and I'd flip through for all these different things that people were coming into for treatment planning. And the first thing was always installation of hope. And I always thought, that's so weird. Like, okay, hi, I'm installing hope. Like, and I really didn't understand what that meant in the way that I do now. I really believe that websites are a place, and our marketing message is a place where people get a sense of, oh, somebody understands me, and there may be a solution, there may be help for me. I'm not on my own, and I don't have to live like this. I don't have to feel like this forever. Like there really is help, because most people feel really helpless. They feel really lost and alone.
Mhm. How are you feeling as we've talked about website stuff? There was a time when it was deer in the headlights, but
Yeah.
now I see you sitting there just kind of taking in. How does it feel?
I think it's kind of a both and. It feels like, wow, this is great. I'm so grateful to get the feedback, and how did I miss this, and I'm missing this, and then, well, shit, I got a lot of work to do.
One page at a time, Sarah. Like,
Yeah.
know, the main 2 pages are the home page and
Yeah.
then that divorce page. Just
Yeah. Do you make those? Are you saying not to list those, like the divorce and separation, because those are several services? Do I just list all those in the services page?
No, you don't need to list all of those. Like, I'll make you a video later, but
Okay.
again, I want you to think about it in terms of boxes and images. And there's an image that has the name of your service, that box is clickable, and then maybe it has a sentence below that is clickable as well, right?
Okay.
So then that has all of those pieces. So I can clearly see in this colorful, image heavy way that and again, in terms of my finger, if I'm on a mobile or a tablet, I can go that. I can literally click on it.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
if I'm on a laptop or a desktop, that I can easily take my arrow and say, yes, I want that.
I think it's a good question about, like, in the navigation bar, if you want a subfolder to pop up. I would have to see it, but I have a feeling it would be chaotic. I think it would be.
I think what it would probably be is it, and let me go look at what you have on your main navigation, but I have a feeling it would be a main navigation. So instead of it being home, and maybe it's our team, and instead of being services, maybe it would be divorce and separation, and then it would be marriage and blended families
And family. Okay.
Yeah. And then the blogs, and then the careers.
So we have a couple ways we can go with that.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I'm very grateful to all 4 of your eyes looking on this. And
I'm very proud of you for the willingness to evolve. I remember when I first hired Miranda and I built my site, and it was like, it was all black. I really love black with white writing on it, which is just terrible for eyesight anyway.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is my baby. This is awesome. And within a week, it was totally redone. And then, within another month or 2, it was updated based on data, not based on anything other than just learning. And so every time you learn, you've had a willingness to go back and implement, and not take it as like, there's something wrong with me, I messed this up. Instead of just saying, okay, this is the next thing that we know, and we're going to go through it. I think that place with your website is always going to be an asset for you as you grow and change. That ease of like, okay, I'm learning and I'm adapting. Because if we get stuck, like sometimes when people, especially when people have their website designed, they're like, I love this design, I love that photo. And I'm like, the photo isn't doing anything for the page. And we get so locked into aesthetic or whatever, or something that we wrote that was so meaningful. It can hold us back from really meeting the clients where they're at. And you have evolved into this beautiful place of like, I'm going to do what it takes for people to understand how well we can help them. And I want to applaud you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think it's almost like people look at the design of their website sometimes like they're designing their living room, or even their waiting room, so that it has like this aesthetic feeling, even if it's not communicating anything at all. So the person is kind of lost. So save that beautiful design aesthetic for your offices, y'all who are listening. If you really want to go there of having the perfect image, and really select images and fonts and colors that really make it easy for your ideal client to like see and connect and move through the process.
So this has been a lot, Sarah. So I want to encourage you to, after this, go take a break.
Okay.
Leave it
Well,
be.
I think just to kind of pivot on what you guys are saying, I think as I've been doing this for 6 years, one of the things I'm getting more and more comfortable with is holding things lightly.
Nice.
Not holding onto them so tight, especially as you start to hire people and you invest in them and then they leave, and how that can feel like such a breakup. Like if I can hold on to these things lightly and just see the fluidity of what is happening, I can learn so much more.
Beautiful.
I love it.
So I think in terms of like, hold it lightly, go take a break, don't look at your website for a moment. And then first we want to decide what your first decision will be, that navigation kind of layout, and then going back through the pages. So you have time, no rush, take care of you. But thank you for being vulnerable and letting us get in there and pick apart and look at some of the nitty gritty.
I think it'll be so interesting too for the people who are listening to this. They're going to see something totally different, right? They're going to be pulling up the website and they're going to go, wait, I don't see that, because it will change. And that's what happens with websites, is that websites are living and breathing. They shift and change over time. They're not something that's static, like your business card that you can't, you got to throw them out and you got to get them reprinted. You can easily edit and shift right on the fly. So thank you again for your vulnerability.
You do make it easy to be vulnerable because you're very trustworthy.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Thanks for listening today. Hope this inspires you in working on your website and through those fun little stuck places. I hope that you will continue to listen to Starting a Private Practice. And of course, as always, if you want more of our nitty-gritty help with all the parts of starting your private practice, check out our business school for therapists. You can go to zinnyme.com/pod for wonderful freebies and a little discount for business school.
Next up, we're going to be working on marketing. This is the place that most people just want to jump right into. And now we are ready. So we will see you next time.